Welcome to our Patagonia Adventure webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, buenas tardes. Those of you on the East Coast are on the same time zone as André in Chile. And then we have Victor from Argentina, who's 1 hour further ahead than that. So welcome again. My name is Sharman Fox. I'm the program director for Latin America at Mountain Travel Sobek. And I'm just super excited today to get to talk about one of the most spectacular places on the planet, which is Patagonia, and also to do so with two of our most experienced and beloved trip leaders, André Labarca, who you see pictured there in the bandana on the right, and also waving on camera, and then Victor Garra on the left in the photo. And he is also joining us live from Argentina. So just a few words of introduction for these two gentlemen. André, like I said, is from Chile. He is an accomplished mountaineer and climber. He's been climbing and exploring throughout the Andes for over 25 years. He's had many first ascents. He's climbed the Paine Towers. He grew up in central Chile, actually, but lived in Patagonia for some 20 years and recently moved a bit further north to the Araucanía region, where he lives now. And I think just the most important thing to say about André is that as a guide, his goal is to free all of the guests up, to free you up from having to worry about any of the logistical details, and instead really have the opportunity to enjoy a really great deep bond with nature and immerse yourself in the experience. He is just, his sense of wonder is truly infectious. You really can't help but share his amazement at just the power of nature in this part of the world. And he sets a really special atmosphere on every trip that he leads. So welcome, André. We're so excited to have you. And then also to introduce Victor Garra. Victor was born in Buenos Aires, and he earned an official national tourism degree before starting to work in tourism in Argentina about 25 years ago also. He lives just south of Buenos Aires in Tandil, and he's also traveled extensively throughout Argentina and Chile, and he divides his time between the Patagonia region and also in the wine regions of Argentina and Chile. He's super passionate about sharing his love of his country. He's a former rugby player, which is fun, and he still coaches rugby. And he also is a wine connoisseur, a wine enthusiast, and loves cooking as well. So really will be happy to talk always about the wines and the foods of Argentina and Chile. Both of these guides have just proven themselves again and again and again. I've had the deep pleasure of working with them and through any kind of crisis. And they are just an amazing support for our guests. And they really deeply do care about the experience that everybody has on the trip, of keeping everyone safe, making sure that what's on your bucket list is something that you get to do. So they are just really special people to be leading our trips. So I will keep moving forward here as we've got a lot to cover. And just want to say a few words about Mountain Travel Sobek's history in Patagonia. So it's a long history, as in so many of the regions of the world. Actually, starting in 1974, Mountain Travel started an overland journey by vehicle back then and did a 600-mile journey, including the Fitzroy and Paine Towers areas, which set the stage for future trips. It was not until 1979 that the actual John Gardner Pass and the O Circuit opened around Torres del Paine. And only a few years after that, Leo Laban scouted the first mountain travel trek around the Paine Massif. And then we brought our first group there in 1987. So it's been a long time. talking with André a bit too, also about the history. It's fun to think about how much has changed over that time, and even since the early 2000s. Even in the early 2000s, there weren't necessarily paved roads to get from Punta Arenas to Porto, up to Torres del Paine. You know, it was only paved one way; the other way was gravel. Back trying to get from El Calafate to the Fitzroy Range in Argentina, it used to be all gravel. It would take about 6 hours to drive that route. It only takes about 3 now. Anyway, a lot has changed. And Mountain Travel Sobek has been pioneering trips in this area for a long time. So super proud of that legacy. And moving to the next slide, I am going to turn things over to André to give you an introduction to Patagonia.
Well, thank you very much, Sharman, for your words, and to Victor and to all the team, all the support team that is in the office, to make this possible, and to all the guests, that they're joining us, so we can have the opportunity to talk about this amazing area that move us, deeply, So we're going to make it first. We're going to talk a little bit about the Patagonia introduction. We have a satellite photo in this slide that basically is showing us, where is the white, where it goes through the Andes range, and we have the Pacific Sea in the left side and the Atlantic Sea in the right. And for me personally, Patagonia is very much about very remote and endless landscape that open up our imagination. And I particularly love, the clouds and how the wind move the clouds in the grassland and around the mountain ranges. I think that that's very particular, of this region. Um, as the Andes range starts in Venezuela, and it travels 7,000 kilometers through 7 countries until it gets to latitude 40, that is like the north side of this map, where starts Patagonia in the Argentinian side mostly. And once start to travel down through perfect volcano shapes, we start to have a drop down in the altitude. The highest mountain in the Andes is Aconcagua in the side of Mendoza or Santiago area. And then into Patagonia, central and southern Patagonia, we have two ice fields. We have the northern ice field and the southern ice field. That is the third biggest reservation of ice that goes over 200 miles from north to south. And the Andes ranges start to drop down in altitude, until gets to the Darwin mountain range close to the Beagle Channel, like in the south tip of the map, where the highest peak is like 8,000 feet above sea level. So it's very different, the Andes from the north than from the south, and the weather comes from the west. The Andes holds the moisture and doesn't allow to travel all the rain to the east. So technically, Patagonia, especially in the east side, where is Argentina located in this case, is a desert. It's a grassland of a desert that represents 70% of Patagonia mostly, where that holds most of the wildlife. A lot of wildlife is held in the grassland, in the sea, and also in the inland of this grassland that it rains like 200 millimeters in um, 1 year. Um, this map covers 16-degree latitude, 40-degree in the north, and 56-degree in Cape Horn, that is in the south tip of the map. And all the fjords and the channels that is in the west side of the Andes is one of the most rainy places in the world. It rains like 21 feet of rain a year. So the environment, from the west than from the east, is very, very different. And talking about inhabitants, we're talking a little bit more than 2 million inhabitants in all this landscape that we are referring to. So the Magellan Strait is in the south part of the map as well. By the way, the name Patagonia, it comes from the journey of Magellan that started in 1520, 500 years ago. when he encouraged the first people close to the Magellan Strait in 1520, they relate to them like very tall people, the First Nations, the Aonikenk. And because of that, they give the name of Patagonia, that basically means the big food land. And the boundaries of this First Nation, that they were hunter recolectors um, with very low population, that they disappear or they're gone for not in a long period of time. Their limits in the south was the Magellan Strait, and then in the north was the Colorado River in the Argentinian side. So that's why the name, it comes from. You can check out the book of Pigafetta that refers to the journey of Magellan, that I highly recommend. It's one of the greatest journeys ever in the world, I think, with the first steps on the moon in 1969, from my point of view. We can move to the other slide, Charman, because we're going to, I mean, Patagonia is a very big land, and the boundaries of Patagonia really depends of different books with who we talk, and we can talk for many hours about that, but the idea here is to take advantage of the time we have, so we can show you, the areas that we visit, that is in these 3 trips that we're going to talk about. The first 2 pictures in the upper side of these slides is one of the famous mountains in Torres del Paine National Park, and the low ones are the famous mountains in Los Glaciares National Park in the Fitzroy Range. By the way, the picture that's in sunrise is the Fitzroy profile. That is the same profile of Patagonia clothing brand. That I guess that you all figure out that, and shows that profile. Um, so we have Torres del Paine with the 3 towers, with the Alpine Lake, and then we have Los Cuernos, that means the horns, with that black shell rock and the granite shining in the sun. And then the picture of the guy that is taking picture of Cerro Torre, that is a very famous mountain for its beauty, for its history in mountaineering. And then as well, we have the Fitzroy, that is very, very famous peak, first climbed in 1952 by a French expedition. And then, it have the third ascent was made by Yvon Chouinard and Douglas Tompkins, that we can talk a little bit about that as well. Then we can move another slide. We can talk about different wildlife that we have in Patagonia, especially where it's the grassland or in the forest area. There we have a nice group of upland geese. We can see thousands of them in March, April together, ready to migrate. Then we have the southernmost parakeet in the world, the Austral parakeet. We have the Magellan woodpecker that is of the size of the pileated woodpecker in the US. We have the lesser rhea, that is an astrid, is the lesser astrid of all the 5 astrids that we have in the world. And we have a pygmy. And then in the next slide, we can see other examples, about different wildlife, like the guanaco that is jumping, is from the camel family. We have 4 different camel family species or mammals in South America. Patagonia holds only one of the species, that is the guanaco. And we have other species also, like the armadillos, gray fox, red fox, mountain lions, Jeffrey cats, the Andean deer, and other species that we don't have in the slides, but definitely
Condors, of course.
condors. Thank you, flamencos. So definitely, some days feels like Africa when we're in the grassland.
Mhm. Wow. Well, thank you, Andre, for that introduction of Patagonia. That was amazing, and I want to thank again to Sharman and the team at MT Sobek for doing this presentation possible. Um, so here we are sharing a few some quick facts about Patagonia. Um, as Andre told you, it's a very vast land, that roughly covers around 400,000 square miles. So that makes it larger than California and Texas combined, as it shows here. In Patagonia, we will also find some ice age relics, some glaciers that were formed some 18,000 years ago, during the last ice age. The southern Patagonian icefield, which is the third largest mass of ice outside of Antarctica and Greenland, and also a huge reservoir for fresh water. And then, of course, the mountains, this enchanting granite massif that André mentions in Torres del Paine, and the Fitzroy Range, being the Fitzroy the tallest one with 11,000 feet. And Sharman, if we go to the next slide, I think we have a nice glacier. This is the Piedras Blancas glacier with the Fitzroy in the background. This glacier, as many others in the region, is fed by the southern Patagonian icefield, or as we call it in Spanish, the Campo de Hielo Sur. This Patagonian icefield is, as I told you, the third largest mass of ice, and it covers approximately 5,000 square miles. Huge. And from north to south is about 200 miles long. It spans the border between Argentina and Chile, and I believe nowadays is like 85% of it is on the Chilean side, while 15% is on the Argentinian side. There are also other important glaciers, famous, some of them, like the Perito Moreno Glacier in Argentina, the Usala, which is the largest one on the Argentinian side, and the Gray Glacier in Torres del Paine. Being the Perito Moreno the most popular, the most famous one, particularly because it has this spectacular ice calving event that happens every certain number of years, and also because of the easy access that to get to see it. You can literally drive your car to the parking lot and walk from there 100 meters to see the main balconies in front of the glacier. So that's why it's very, very popular and famous. Luckily, much of this ice is protected within national parks, as André mentioned. Los Glaciares National Park in the Argentinian side, and Bernardo O'Higgins National Park on the Chilean side. Also is an important indicator of the climate change. So we'll see, the scientists, they are constantly, they monitor its retreat, and they can tell about, environmental change. And it's also provides valuable information about glaciology and climate history. So it's very important for all of us. And there is a curiosity, on this. There is an area on the ice field that's the border between Argentina and Chile is still nowadays unresolved. So if you take a map, an official map, you'll see the borderline that in a certain point it disappears. It's like undefined border. So that's kind of funny nowadays. So Shama, we can continue to, please, to the next slide to talk about a little bit of culture and food and wine in this region. I think we can define Patagonian culture as a blend, of indigenous heritage and European settlement. The indigenous people, the Tehuelches, known as Aoniken Mapuche, Selknams, Chamanas people. Nowadays, we can still see some influences from them on traditional craft like silver jewelry or textiles, where you'll find a very distinctive geometric patterns, and also, well, the place names all over the region. Then we have the gaucho. The gaucho tradition is central to the Patagonian identity. These guys, horsemanship experts with great cattle handling skills. Their distinctive dress, they have the bombachas, these loose fitting pants, and the boinas, that characteristic hat they wear. I think in English you call it berets or something like that.
Beret.
Beret. And then their traditional knives, that they call facones, pretty big knives. As we can see in the bottom left picture, the asado, the barbecue, for both, as a cooking technique, but also as a social ritual to get together. Another social ritual is the mate. We don't have a picture here of the mate, but there's that typical infusion that we drink a lot, in Argentina all over the place, and in Chile mostly in Patagonia. That take us together. We invite friends, come over to talk about life, and we drink some mates. This is we use a dry pumpkin, a gourd, where we fill it with the yerba mate, which is these special leaves, and with a straw and a filter, we put hot water and drink it as a green tea, basically. That's also very typical. And some music as well that features the guitar and some folk dances. And then finally, the European settlements, as we receive for many years different waves of immigrants, particularly from Wales, from Italy, from Sharman, from Croatia. So these immigrant communities, they introduce their pastries, their brewing techniques, and mainly agricultural practices. So I think nowadays all of this lives together in Patagonia. In terms of food, well, lamb is one of the main dishes you will find in Patagonia. Of course, the Argentinian beef, and fish and seafood, mainly on the Chilean side, that includes trout, salmon, king crab, guanaco, of course, that was the main meal for the indigenous, and then hearty stews and soup that are common, to combat the cold climate of Patagonia. And then finally, in terms of wines, we have a long tradition in Argentina and Chile. We have, even though the wine productive areas are located farther north, near Santiago, in Chile, and Mendoza in Argentina, nowadays we produce some wines in Patagonia, and during these trips, you will have plenty of opportunities to enjoy them. So that will resume a little bit about the food and wine and culture of the area.
Thank you so much, Victor.
You're welcome.
That's fascinating. We would love to now dive into some specifics about the actual Mountain Travel Sobek trips that we offer in Patagonia. We have 3 that we're going to talk about today, and we'll start with the most challenging hiking trip that we offer, which is the Ultimate Patagonia hiking trip, and then we will talk about our Patagonia hiking with Premier Lodging, which is not quite as long or steep of trails. And then lastly, we'll talk about our combination hiking and cruising that gives you an even more time besides, to do other things besides the hiking. So there's definitely some hiking, but some other activities as well. So I will quickly jump forward and turn it back over to André to talk about our ultimate Patagonia hiking trip.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, well, the ultimate Patagonia hiking is a tremendous trip from my point of view. We visit the two Iconos national parks that are famous for different reasons, but in particular for the good trekking that we have in the mountains. Um, it's a trip of 12 days. It's a level 4, where we hike like 100 miles in total, in an average of between 8 and 12 miles a day. Um, so I like to divide this trip basically like in 3 sections. First we start in Torres del Paine, where we do the W trek, where we have a well, sorry, then we have the Perito Moreno Glacier in between in Calafate, and then at the end, we visit for the last 4 nights the Fitzroy Range, where we also hike about the same distance that we hike in the W in the Chilean side. Um, and the first day that we arrived to the Torres del Paine National Park, we do some little hikes there before getting inside the W, so we can check how's the group doing. We can walk off the beaten track area, so we can give you like the opportunity to be in places that we may be more alone, that when we're deep inside the mountains. And then I will say that Torres del Paine W is kind of a challenging, terrain. It's a little bit more challenging that in the Fitzroy, because first I will say because of how we maintain the trails in the Fitzroy Range. Patagonia clothing brand been putting money, for helping to maintain the trails. In Torres del Paine, we've been a little bit more weak in that sense. But what makes it more challenging also in Torres del Paine is that we have to walk from one location to another. First day we arrive to the Gray Hotel, then we go to the Paine Refugio. Then at the third day we move to Los Cuernos, and then at the fourth, fifth day we stay in the same hotel. So every day we have to change, from one location to another. And as well, we have to be able to cover the distance in that first 3 days, because we have to arrive to the location where we're going to stay overnight. Um, I will say that this trip is a not an easy level 4. I will refer to it like a difficult level 4 if I compare with other ones. Keep in mind that this is a level 4 that is not in high altitude. Generally high altitude level 4s, um, it's not because of the distance or the terrain or the pace that makes them level 4. It's more about high altitude. But in Patagonia, in this trip, is mostly because of the conditions, and basically we need endurance. We need endurance, to be able to cover the Pine Range, and then being able to to keep that endurance, to be fit enough and feeling much better at the end of the trip. If we're able to feel that endurance at the end of the trip and feeling great, that's great news for everybody. But it's a hard, but sometimes, like always, to see beautiful places, we have to give something of us. So
One
I'm
thing
going
I
to
think
refer.
maybe we point out, sorry, Andre, was just to point out the road on this
Sure,
map and
sure.
and where the road goes and where it doesn't go.
So we start in
Yeah,
the Gray Hotel, whereas the Gray Lake is the lake that is in the left side of the map. And we first hike 8 miles the first day, that goes from the Gray Lake Glacier, if you can point it out, to Paine
yeah. Here's
Grande. That
here's
is
the glacier. Yeah,
the refugio that is in the lower part. Then the next day we go inside Frenchman's Valley. This is like a difficult day, like 12 miles, and then we sleep in Los Cuernos. So the first day is like a moderate, then Frenchman's Valley is a difficult. Then we have a moderate then day, Paso Los Cuernos, to get to Las Torres Hotel. And then we have a difficult day that takes you to the base of the towers, 11 miles, 3,000 feet of gain elevation, where we have to go through a talus field. moraine, in the last hour. So that's about, the W. We can show other slides, maybe, Chairman,
Sure.
that
Yeah.
it shows us a little bit, how's the conditions of the trail. Like, for example, the upper photo is on the way to the viewpoint of the Frenchman's Valley, that we go through a moraine, that it means that we have rocks in between, with some roots, and we kind of walk above tree line at the end. Then the lower picture shows on the way to the base of the towers. That is the typical picture of the three towers with the Alpine Lake on the top. That also is above tree line. You can see that you are above tree line. And then you have another example that kind of cross the mountain range in front, that is a little bit more smooth terrain, like in general, where you have kind of more sand, in between the rocky peels that you generally have, um, on the trail. I'm checking my points to see if I put everything on. Um, and then, yeah, that's the typical picture of the base of the towers, where you have the three Equinox towers. That is the name of the national park, and then we can come back to the next slide, because we're going to talk about the Fitzroy as well. You remember that after we do Torres del Paine W, we have a drive day to Calafate, like a 7 hour of we cross boundaries to Argentina. We visit the Perito Moreno Glacier, and we travel on the way to the Chaltén, where it's the Fitzroy Range. And we stay for 4 nights here, where the couple of first nights we stay in the Fitzroy camp, that is in the lagoon, that is located in the upper part of the map. If you can show it,
Hmm.
Charman. It's like a
Hmm.
lagoon, a little lagoon there that
Where do
says
we have
Laguna
the?
Azul.
Oh, yeah, here.
Where's
This
Electrico
is.
Valley?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have that's where we stayed for the first 2 nights. So that way we can drive less, and we can have the opportunity, to be more in the north side of the park. And then the last couple of nights we stay in town, so we can have the opportunity to walk the hike that is by the side of town, so we don't have to drive. We always look for a balance in between being outside as much as possible, and driving as less as possible to be in the best places. So in that sense, sometimes we choose the forecast depending on how's the weather. We generally want to see the Fitzroy best view with the best day of weather that we may have in this 4 days visit. And logistically makes it a little bit more easy, like in that sense, because we can choose kind of a hike, trying to avoid to drive that much. And here we also do like a W kind of. We first visit Electrical Valley, that is in the north side of the map, where we can visit the north face of the Fitzroy. Then we do Laguna Los Tres, that takes you to that lagoon that is in the middle of the map, that have that big climb up Talos Field, where you can see the Equinox pictures of the east face of the Fitzroy. That's a 13-mile hike, and we end up in the Chaltén that day. And at the third day, we hike to the Cerro Torre viewpoint, where is the lagoon that is located in the lower part of the map, where we can see the Alpine Lake with the glacier and the Cerro Torre peak in the background. As well, on the way to the Fitzroy from Calafate, we also have like a half a day hike, so we can get a little prepared before we do these last 3 days, you know, of hikes. Like coming back, we are hiking about 100 miles in between these two national parks. And then this is a picture of the viewpoint of Laguna Los Tres. That is the east face of the Fitzroy, with the satellite peaks around it of granite that they're very big as well. This hike, for example, is 13 miles, where the last hour and a half we got to go through long steps in a talus field until we get to this viewpoint that is tremendous, beautiful, above tree line as well, exposed to the Patagonian weather. That, by the way, we can have 4 seasons in hours, and then the next slides, shows Cerro Torre, peaks as well, the Fitzroy on the distance, where we can see the town. But Cerro Torre is a very famous mountain that we will talk about is climbing story, that is even very interesting, like Everest first ascent, so we discuss about it. And then in the last slide, because we have to talk about the other trips as well, is a little set about our accommodations. The first two accommodations on the top part of this picture is like the more basic accommodations that we have in the W. Like first we have the bedroom with the beautiful view of the Massif, that's the gray hotel in the lower part, left low. And then we have the bunk beds, that is the best that we have in the area. It's only one, is a room with one bunk bed where you have to share the facilities of the refugio. And then in Los Cuernos cabins, they have these beautiful cabins in a gorgeous location where guests have to share the facilities in between the 8 cabins that we take, generally all of them. And then we have the Fitzroy camp in the lower right side, that is beautiful, gorgeous, of the beaten track in the side of a river, with the north face view of the Fitzroy. By the way, from town Chalten, we don't see the peaks because we have hills very close by, but this place gives us the chance, to see the sunset and sunrise with the lake in front. They have a hot tub, they have a fireplace, and it's pretty private. We really like that very much.
These accommodations get you so close to the trails. You get on the trails before everybody else who's coming from further away. And also, like Andre said, you have the sunrise and sunset. I mean, definitely, I remember incredible sunset hitting the horns, the cuernos, that you can see from these cabins here. It's just amazing, the beautiful sunlight. And then again, we saw the same of Fitzroy, the sun hitting Fitzroy from these cabins that are also along a river, and there's foxes running, a family of foxes that's there. So they're very special, but they are rustic. So, definitely one thing to think about on this trip.
The other thing, sorry, Sharman, that I forget to mention, that in the W also we are restricted with the amount of gear that we can bring, because we are staying 2 nights in campgrounds inside the mountains, and by logistics we're not, able to take all our luggage. So we provide with a dry bag to each client that is carried by porters. That is extra gear that you will need for the night or extra gear for the next day hikes. And then when we arrive at the last hotel in Las Torres in the W, you will have your luggage back. There's a very big summary about it, but basically it's not 3 days. It sounds better. I always say it sounds better 2 nights than 3 days.
You're already wearing your clothes for the first day, so you just need,
exactly.
Yeah, you'll be changing clothes twice. Thank you so much. We better move to the next trip, so I will turn it over to Victor to talk about our Patagonia hiking with Premier Lodging.
All right, thank you, Sharman and André. Well, this hiking with Premier Lodging trip will cover pretty much the same area as the ultimate hiking. In this case, we will start in Argentina, in the town of El Calafate. We will pick you up there if you arrive the day before, and start moving north to El Chalten. We stay 3 nights in El Chalten in town. Then we come back to El Calafate for 2 nights. We stay there at a very nice hotel. And then we cross the border into Chile for the last 3 nights in Torres del Paine. So this is a 9-day trip. Level 3, which is a moderate, well, the same season from November to March. I believe, this trip is like a perfect combination to enjoy moderate hikes through some of Patagonia's, most beautiful landscapes. That of course includes the Fitzroy and Torre and the Perito Moreno Glacier and the Torres del Paine Massif. And then with premier accommodations and superb food and wine, all of this in just 9 days. In this slide here, we can see the type of accommodations we will have. First 3 nights at El Chalten is a very comfortable hotel located on a small hill overlooking the town and the valley of Rio de las Vueltas. We stay there for 3 nights. Then we go to Eolo. That is the 3 pictures in the bottom of the slides. This is a relais and chateau property located within an estancia, a ranch of 10,000 acres, and is located between El Calafate and Perito Moreno Glacier. So it's outside of town, and it will bring some contrast to the trip because it's located on the steppes. You know, as André mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we have the mountains and the forest with all the humidity, and then we have the steppes all the way to the Atlantic shore. So as this is located a bit east from the mountains, we'll get that contrast as well. And then finally in Torres del Paine, the picture on the top, that's Tierra Patagonia Hotel. It's located on the shore of the Lake Sarmiento, and with a beautiful architecture that melts with the surrounding landscape. Beautiful spa, and you know, it's like the perfect luxury base for our trek there in Torres del Paine. Do we have maps, Sharman, in the next?
Yes.
Okay, so here this is the same map that André shows a few minutes before, but here we start from El Chaltén. The first hike we do is the one that goes on the bottom of the map to Laguna Torre. For these hikes, I mean, for this trip, we designed it in order to provide alternatives, you know, like a short version, a short hike, and a long hike in the same area and the same day. There will be several guides with the group, so that allowed us to either, you know, split the group in different paces if we are going to do it all, or we can even split the group for those that goes only, you know, to the shorter option, that it's about 4 miles in this case, to a lookout point to see the Torre from there, and then the others that continue all the way to the Lago Torre and back. That will be a 12-mile hike. And then the next day we drive for 30 minutes in the morning to the trailhead that is on the Electrico River. And again, we'll have on the same trail 2 options. We go for the first couple of hours and gain some altitude to see a lookout point of the Piedras Blancas Glacier right there. And from there, those that decide to, you know, turn around, we walk back on the same trail, and there will be a vehicle waiting for us. So they will drive us back to town. And those that wish to continue, we'll go to the Poinsonot campsite, basically, which is an area, it's a campsite for a base camp for those, you know, climbers and expeditions that goes to Fitzroy. And from there, we start looping, you know, back to El Chaltén. This is one of the, you know, my favorite days of the trip, because it's a very, because of the variety of the trail. We'll be into the woods, in the open. You know, we have the constant views of the Fitzroy all the way. We stop by a lagoon on the way back, and once we get to town, we get together to celebrate at a local brewery in El Chaltén. So it's kind of it's a nice touch. So after that, we visit El Calafate, Perito Moreno Glacier, and we do some horseback riding at the Olo. I think we have a slide that shows that later. And then continue to Torres del Paine. And here in the map, we have the Tierra Patagonia Hotel marked there in the eastern shore of the Sarmiento Lake. The day we cross to Torres del Paine, we enjoy a light lunch as soon as we check in at the lodge. And in the afternoon, we drive a little bit north to Laguna Azul. to do our first hike. That will be an easy hike of about 2.5 miles. And with a clear day, we have nice views of the towers from there. So then the next day we combine 2 half days into a full day. We walk the center of the park. There is a trail that is called Hunters, which is an area where we have better chances to spot some pumas as well. And then we visit another area that is the western part of the Sarmiento Lake on a small trail that is called Origins of Life. So that will be make a full day of around 9 miles in total. And the final day, this is another day that I like it a lot. We drive a little bit from the hotel a little bit south and into an estancia, and from there we start gaining some altitude, and we'll have a perspective of all the peaks in the park, and then we'll descend on the other side. And this is really out, off the beaten path. You can stay there for hiking for about 5-6 hours and barely see a group of people. So that's really nice. We stop by several lagoons, so we can see a lot of local fauna as well, mainly large variety of birds. And on the other side, we will have the van waiting for us to drive us back to the lodge. So basically, that will be our stay in Torres del Paine. So I think, Sharman, if we move here, we have, this is the day I was mentioning with the Fitzroy in view, constant views of the Fitzroy. And then on the next slide, I think we have a picture of El Calafate. We have Eolo, where we do an easy horseback riding. You don't need any kind of experience to do that. Horses are very well cared. And then the Perito Moreno. Also, we visit the Perito Moreno Glacier. We do a short hike in the morning on a trail that goes on the shore of the lake, and we see the southern face of the glacier, and then we go on the footbridges, and we start from the north part until the main the front wall of the glacier for about 2 miles. So it's another moderate hike. So basically that encompasses this fantastic trip with opportunities for moderate hikes, beautiful landscapes, great food and wine. This is the last one from Agostini Pass. This is on the last trail we do in Torres del Paine. So beautiful landscape, as I was telling you, and with all the peaks of the park surrounding us.
Thank you so much, Victor.
You're welcome.
We will keep moving forward. We still have one more trip to cover. We'll go back to André to talk about our combination of hiking and cruising that includes the fjord.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Victor, for all that information. Sounds great. Well, I also love this. I mean, I love any trip in Patagonia because Patagonia is very special. But what I love about this trip basically is the combination of having the opportunity to visit a very remote area that is the Cape Horn with the Beagle Channel, Tierra del Fuego, the Darwin Mountain Range. And we start in Ushuaia in Tierra del Fuego on the Argentinian side. We take a cruise boat for 4 days. And it's an 11-day trip, level 3, where the last 4 nights we stay in Torres del Paine, having the opportunity to do also hikes of the beaten track with more wildlife and different views of the mountains. So it's very interesting, the cruise boat, because the only way that you can basically visit, Cape Horn and the Beagle Channel and the Magellan Strait navigation, or we do it through this cruise boat that is an expedition cruise boat of 200 passengers. or we or you will need to take a sailing boat, a chartered sailing boat, to be able to see all this. I mean, first, we start in Ushuaia, and the next day in the morning we disembark in Cape Horn, in the southern island of the archipelago. There is a World Heritage Site. It's a national park. It's very special, when you visit Cape Horn. It's something unique about it. You have the Drake Passage in front. You are 600 miles away from the tip of Antarctica Peninsula. It's a lot of wildlife, albatrosses or whales around there. Then we get on the way to the Beagle Channel, where we can have the opportunity to be in the area where Fitzroy with Charles Darwin in the 1830s. They make their journey, to with the baggage of the Beagle. That was almost 5 years, where they stayed 2 years in this area, because the purpose of the Beagle, it was to make the charts of this area, and then navigate through the Beagle Channel, have the opportunity to see the glaciers coming from the Darwin mountain range. They're 8,000 feet tall, but we can see that gain elevation from the sea. Albatrosses, petrels, humpback whales, orcas, Magellan penguins, skuas, diving petrels, cormorants, so many different birds. And on the last day, after visiting a couple of days glaciers, we visit 4 incredible glaciers. We have the opportunity to disembark in the Magdalena Island, that is a national monument that holds 60,000 penguins, rockery, that in certain times of the year when we visited, thank you, Chairman, we can see, penguins with skuas and kelp gulls, and you can see the cycle of death and life pretty much in front of you, because the ones that survive are the strong ones, and the ones that are not very strong, they're not able to survive, and we can watch this uh, amazing, nature moment, in the Magdalena Island. Hopefully, we can have the chance to disembark like in Cape Horn, because it depends on weather. The expedition cruise boat, it can hold 200, passengers. They make an incredible job there. Since I've been doing this trip around 20 years, they never break down in the service. They know very well how to do the timing of the disembarkation. They make very good lectures on the way in between the disembarkations as well. The food, the team, they've been running this for almost 3 decades, and you can see that they're doing a great job, and basically give us the opportunity to be in these places that I mentioned before. And then we disembark in Punta Arenas. Keep in mind that Punta Arenas and the Magellan region is very important in the marine history. Let's talk about Magellan, 1520. We can talk about Francis Drake in the end of the 16th century. We can talk about Charles Darwin, Robert Fitzroy, making the charts in the 19th century, almost in the beginning, of the 19th century. Then we have all the Antarctica history. We have the Amundsen, we have Northern Skull, we have Shackleton, there's so many important things about the marine history of Patagonia. We can visit in Punta Arenas replicas of the now Victoria, that is the galleon boat that was used by Magellan, original size, and of the Beagle as well, the original size that Darwin was navigating through almost 5 years. And then we sleep one night in Puerto Natales, and we have 4 nights in Torres del Paine, where we have a combination of basically 3 hotels, 2 in the left side of the park, then the west side that is marked the Gray Hotel, and the Serrano Hotel that is close to the Serrano River. And then we have a working estancia, that is where we stayed the last 2 nights, that is 300,000 acres, where they raise 60,000 sheep that they export to Europe mostly. So we kind of stay in the west and in the east side of the park. So we can visit first the west side of the park, where is the Great Glacier, where we can maybe encourage the Andean deer, and we can see a little bit more of green and and forests with different frames of the national park. You know, the national park from the west looks very different from the east. And then when we move to the working estancia, give us the opportunity to feel how is the countryside of Patagonia. That is basically how people live down here. We can go to visit a shearing house. Hopefully, we are just on time to see the shearing work, or we can see how they work with the dogs chasing the sheep inside the buildings, all the gates, you know, and have a phenomenal view of the east side of the park, where it's surrounded by a lot of wildlife. So when we stay in the estancia, we focus more hiking of the beating track trails in between 3 and 8 miles, I will say, by day, trying to, depending on the interest of the group. And by the way, we're always two guides, so we can spread the groups as well, depending how how convenient it is, you know, depending on each group. But basically, we are trying to be in the right time, in the right moment, you know, because of the light, because of the weather, and because of the people, you know, and try to match the best moments in each trail, and try to be with less people as well. You know, that's our goal, you know. And here's some other pictures about Torres del Paine with the wildlife. We have some cave paintings as well. You know, Torres del Paine is surrounded by lakes all around that they all have different colors. So, I mean, the Pine Range is a very special, unique mountain range, and also we can have the chance to see mountain lions. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 trips in the year, you know, I am personally able to see pumas. The team in total, we see maybe 20% of the time of the trips we are able to see pumas. So I love coming back. The combination of this trip allowed us to see the fjords, the channels, like I mentioned, and then have a deep inside of Torres del Paine with holistic mountains, where we stay in very unique places, you know, like the Gray Hotel that is in this picture with the Gray Glacier on the distance. And I'm not sure there is another slide, Charman, or maybe that's, and then you have the Serrano Hotel in the lower part, pictures and some of the frames of the Paine Massif. You know, when you're looking to the Paine Massif of the Paine Range from a little bit distance, you're able to see the full frame. You know, when you walk inside the mountains, you only see like one part of the full frame of the national park. Actually, the name of the national park, we should change it to the Paine Range instead of the Torres del Paine National Park, I think, because it's the group of mountains and the frame of the lakes, the glaciers, and the wildlife that makes it one of the 8 natural wonders of the world. Uh, and this is Cerro Guido Estancia that they're making incredible job. It's like a boutique hotel, one of my favorite places to stay in the park, where most of the rooms are located, where was the house of the manager. There was a British man that they rebuilt it, you know, to keep the atmosphere of the old times, you know, how the people used to live there. So yeah, that's about this trip, you know. So we already talked about these three options that we have down here.
Thank you so much. We are almost out of time, but I do want to say again what an amazing team of guides that we have, as not just André and Victor, but other guides that you are very likely to see on the Ultimate Patagonia hiking and the hiking and cruise program are Rodrigo, who goes by Ro. So Ro and Andre are both leading those trips quite frequently. And then for the premier lodging, we also have Jorge, in addition to Victor, who's leading, they take turns leading those trips. And they're just so professional, expert guides, really above and beyond. I just can't say enough about what an amazing job they do. And just we are seeing over and over in the evaluations for the trips as well, people are really loving these experiences and recognizing what Mountain Travel Sobek brings to the table in terms of the itinerary design, choosing the accommodations, also the transportation. The drivers are a huge part of the success of the trip. The porter teams that we have on the W route, etc. So that's been really gratifying to see the great evaluations. And then just to point out again, so We operate trips in Patagonia between November and March. That is the season. And I do think just quickly, if we can say a few words about the different months between November and March. I don't know, Andre, if you want to just say a few words. November would be actually the springtime in the Southern Hemisphere, and March would be the fall, actually. So it's the opposite than the Northern Hemisphere.
Mm-hmm. So you want I refer a little bit like briefly? Well,
Yeah, just a
the
little bit the
spring.
variation that they might have if people are trying to decide which month to go.
Well, the springtime, in the grassland and in the steppe, you have a lot of wildflowers. You see these flat fields with white flowers, and you can see the cheeks and the cups, of the mammals and of the birds, is very unique. Most of the guanacos, they give birth in the first week of December, for example, and then the babies of the rheas as well is like in November. Of the astrids are very cute, and in general, you see a lot of chicks and cups, and but also the rotation of the sun. We're pretty close to the longest day of the year, so days are long, and also it starts the wind, in the beginning of the spring. That is, stays in the spring and the summer, and then at the end of the summer or the beginning of the autumn, we can have, like, at the end of March, we can have a little bit of opportunity to see the change of the colors, in the trees. But especially, the rotation of the sun is very low because of the latitude 50, 51, or 50, or 49, or 56, and the light is not that bright, and also the sunset and sunrises are not that late or early, so we are able to see them more. That's like, and you generally have a little bit less of wind, but you can have colder weather in the summer than in the autumn,
Hmm.
or in the spring. Not necessarily the summer means that it's going to be warmer. It
Hmm.
depends how lucky we are with the windows of weather that we're going to experience in our visit.
Exactly.
Absolutely. We definitely have March departures where they seem to have sun almost every day and pretty warm temperatures. And then we have January departures, which, as you say, is summertime, that it's, hail and raining and snowing. So you never know. With Patagonia, the weather is definitely part of the experience and part of the appeal, honestly, of the trip. It's so dramatic, just seeing the power of nature and the power of the wind. Well, I don't know if I can go a little bit over to field some questions. Let's see. Um, uh, I do have some from the audience. Let's see. There was a question, do I have to carry all of my gear for the length of the W trek? Andre spoke a little bit to that we do have a porter team that carries a stuff sack for you. And so all that you need to carry is what you need on the day's hike. So you need definitely layers and water. You actually don't need to have enough water necessarily to last you all day because there are places you can refill your water from very fresh streams. And then you'll be bringing a packed lunch, so you'll need to have room in your bag for that. But in terms of your overnight stuff, that will go into a stuff sack that the porters carry. And your main suitcase gets transported from the first hotel to the last hotel of the W trek. So you just have the 2 nights when you're in the wilderness lodgings where you don't have your big suitcase. And somebody was asking also, what is the rooming like in the refugios? So Andre did speak to that a little bit as well. It's,
Okay.
yeah, the bunk beds,
Ah,
and then,
sorry.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, in Torres del Paine, we have the first night is an hotel, gray hotel. Then the next 2 nights is like the more basic accommodation that we stay in the trip, I would say, especially Paine Grande, that we get the best that we can get because, I mean, it's the only way. They only have 8 rooms with one bunk bed, and most of the other rooms, there are like 4 or 6 bunk beds in the room, and we don't use that one. So we basically have the opportunity to get, the best room, and you have to share the facilities with the people that stays in the lodge that holds like 100 people. But the good thing is that we have a private room there where we can have our dinner, our breakfast, we can make our sandwich for the next day. and it have a fireplace if we were wet from the day hike day before, and allowed us to be more quiet, and we don't have to make sometimes line to get to the casino to get food or things like that. So it's very, very convenient. And the cabins in Los Cuernos, they are you have to share the facilities, the people only that stays in the cabins, because in the site is a mountain hut that is a little bit lower and a campsite, but people that stays in the campsite and in the refugio, they don't use the facilities of the 8 cabins that we are using, that generally we take all of them. That is in the side of a waterfall. And they have a little fireplace inside the cabins as well that you can turn light on, during the night
A
if you
wood
wish.
stove. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
the
it is
last 2 nights
cold.
we
It is
stay in
cold in
hotel.
those cabins. Yeah.
Yeah, it may be. Yeah.
We did have a question also for Victor about the premier lodging trip. A question about the length of the hikes. What is the distance of the long hikes and the variation of elevation gain, the total hours hiking each day? Can you give a general sense both in Chalten and Torres del Paine?
Yes, the for El Chalten, where we do 2 long hikes with shorter options. The day we go to Torre, the shorter option that goes to the lookout point it's about 4 mile back and forth, but with an elevation gain and loss of roughly 700 feet. While if you continue down into the valley and all the way to the lagoon and back, it will be like 7-hour hike, 12 miles, and the elevation gain and loss is around 1,800 feet. And then the other hike in El Chalten, that is day 3 of the trip, the shorter option is about 8 miles, 4 hours back and forth. The first hour is pretty flat, and then the second hour we gain some altitude. And then if you turn back, you'll do the same, going downhill and then flat again. So that will be roughly 1,000 feet elevation gain and loss. Or if you continue and do the loop back to town, it will take about 6 hours, 12 miles, and the elevation gain is like 1,200 feet and 1,500 elevation loss. Those are the longest hikes we have along the trip. And then for the Torres del Paine, it's an easy hike the day we arrive. That's only 2.5 miles. And then the second and third day is, total 9 to 10 miles. The two hikes, about 5, depending on the pace. It will take us between 5, 6.5 hours to do both. In terms of elevation gain, it's a bit less. It's like 900 elevation gain and loss.
Thank you. We also have a question about what's the temperature range during the trip? What's the lowest temperature they might experience and the highest? And then sun, rain, and snow. I would say yes. yes to sun, rain, and snow. But do you have a general sense, I suppose, in Fahrenheit? How cold can it get, and what is typically the warmest it would get during the November to March timeframe? It's so hard to answer.
Yeah. Well, I think well, for the premier lodging, where we don't go really into the mountains in high altitude in Paine. We do a little bit of that in El Chalten, and you never know. It's like you can have 4 seasons on the same day. Sometimes it's mountain weather, but it's not. It's weird that the temperature goes really like freezing. I think coldest day can go around 40 Fahrenheit, 35, 40, and on a sunny day, really warm days can go up to 90. I don't know. It's like the big range
It's a
of
big
temperature.
range. I will say we get very good feedback about our packing list. That if you go with what we recommend on the packing list, it works really well, and it's amazing how much you can handle in terms of the temperature variations and whatever comes at you. If it's cold, windy, rain. I mean, one thing I would say to for sure not bring is an umbrella. That people will just laugh if you bring an umbrella to Patagonia because it's so windy that it will be of
Yeah.
no
Poncho.
use. No use at all. You need to have waterproof rain gear is one of the most important things that you need. So you definitely need the waterproof rain pants and rain coat and waterproof gloves and waterproof boots. So those elements are very important and you never know when you might need to get them out of your pack. And then you need some warm fleece or down layer to wear under the rain gear, depending on how cold it is. But really, having the right gear makes all the difference. You know, having some smart wool underclothing as well to layer up. You want the technical fabrics that are going to dry quickly and not make you get a chill if you start sweating in them. So all the packing for Patagonia is super important. Really are not going to be comfortable unless you have brought the right gear and clothing for it. But we give you some good guidance about that, and happy that our team is also happy to talk you through what items are really essential. Let me just see, how long is the horseback riding? Victor, if you want to talk about that at Eolo.
Yeah, it's not very long. It would take us about 2 hours. Everything. I mean, since we meet with the gauchos and we'll go to pick the horses, then it's very gentle. We go downhill and flat. We go to see a lagoon with flamingos and upland geese, and then we return right to the hotel. So I would say that it's an hour and a half on the saddle, I would say, 2 hours total activity. We'll do that in an afternoon, so it's just a afternoon activity.
Great. I'm going to take one last question, which was somebody was asking about needing electricity at night on the W route. Do the rustic lodgings on the ultimate Patagonia hiking provide electricity at the Refugio Paine Grande and at the Cabañas de los Cuernos? So André,
Yeah, they
they do.
offer
Yeah.
electricity. Obviously, because we're in the mountains, in Los Cuernos cabins, they have a hydro system that maybe they can break a little bit. And in the Paine Grande Lodge, they provide electricity during the night. Sometimes they shut the light in the night. Depends, if the generator is working well or not, I guess. I cannot guarantee that in 100%, but in the Fitzroy camp, in the Fitzroy range, you have electricity as well for devices, that they're not very, like an air dryer, for example, you cannot use in the Fitzroy camp, or you cannot use it, in Los Cuernos. But if it's a device for helping you to sleep in the night, for example, that use very little voltage, so that's good. Mm.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, especially to André and to Victor, and also very much to everyone who joined the call. I hope it's been helpful, and I hope that you will decide to travel to Patagonia and that we'll see you on the trail. So thank you so very much. There's information here how to contact us, and we'd be super happy to talk with you. So thank you again. Thank you again,
Thank you
Victor and
all.
André, for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you very
Sharman.
much
Thank
to
you, André.
all, and you're most welcome to Patagonia, and let us know if you have any more questions.